Hi, I'm Reggie Turner, and I'm here with Jim Miller and Terrence Moore. The Flipside starts right now. Welcome to the show. We are joined today by two special guests. We are joined by the interim president of the Robert W. Johnson Community Center, Ms. Carolyn Sterling, and we're also joined by the executive director of the Boys and Girls Club of Washington County, Addie Nardi. Welcome, ladies.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Let's start and talk about individually before we get to the good stuff. Addie, I know there's a lot of moving pieces, a lot of things that you're working on at the Boys and Girls Club. First and foremost, establish for the community that may not be familiar, who is the Boys and Girls Club and who do you serve?
Sure. So the Boys and Girls Club of Washington County has been in Washington County for 81 years. We started out as a boys club. In the 90s, they started to let girls in, and we have kind of grown from there. We operate 4 sites in the city, and we just last year started branching off into Cumberland with some outreach funding. We serve kids in 3 Hagerstown Housing Authority communities, and then we have our main clubhouse at Pennsylvania Avenue, which is a mile, if even, from the center.
Across the tracks, right?
Across the tracks, yes.
Excellent. Jim.
So you say you serve the housing developments.
Mm-hmm.
The people that come to your main center, what are the demographics associated with them?
Our kids, the kids that come to the Boys and Girls Club of Washington County, so last year we had to date this year, we've served about 560 kids in our 2 sites, and our 2 counties, and our Cumberland counties are very small. So the bulk of those kids have come from Washington County. Our Pennsylvania Avenue clubhouse, we transport from about 5 elementary schools, 2 middle schools, and 1 high school. Our kids are, by and large, from lower income families. About 85% of the kids that come to the club are Black, brown, or biracial. And when they're in the club, we give them an opportunity just to be a kid, and we run programming to try and help them with their outside life, and to become a productive adult. But by and large, we just try to be a fun place to come to.
Nice.
I'm from New York City, and Boys and Girls Clubs are everywhere. What's the relationship with such a large national umbrella of the Boys and Girls Club, and how that really connects locally?
Sure. So it's a federated model. So we have our own 501c3. We have our own board of directors. We do our own thing. What we get from Boys and Girls Club of America is training, marketing, branding, and really support. Mm-hmm. So, and we work very well. All the clubs in the state of Maryland work very well together.
So all your funding stays home?
Yes. If you give to the Boys and Girls Club of Washington County, it stays in Washington County.
Okay.
And Addie, I'm not sure if you said this, but roughly how many kids do you serve?
So so far this year, we've served about 560.
And that's out of all locations, or just
Yeah.
the 2 main?
Yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
So, and we do outreach too. So we have some funding from the state of Maryland to do some outreach work. And so we have a Club on the Go model, a mobile unit where, like right now, we're out at McCleary Hill in Hagerstown at least 1 or 2 nights a week running the mobile club. And so that's been great because transportation's an issue, right? So kids can't all get to our club. So we are able to get to them, which is really important.
You said most of all you want them to be kids and do fun stuff. Tell me what fun stuff is. What kind of activities might I find them involved in?
So all 4 of our Hagerstown sites have gyms, basketball gyms. That's the main draw, especially for the older kids. That's why they want to come to the club. We do. There's a lot of arts and crafts. There's a lot of games. All of our clubs have a bunch of games, board games. We're very lucky. People do donations of board games. We did move out the pool tables, and they were very heavy. So I don't know that we're going to bring the pool tables back anytime soon. But where we have space, we can do like foosball tables and ping pong tables and stuff like that. The programming is also, we try and make sure that the programming's fun, because by the time the kids get to us, they've been sitting in school all day. They don't want to come to the club and have to sit and learn for another however many hours. So we do we try and make sure that the programs are fun as well.
Okay. What kind of programs?
So we run programs through Boys and Girls Club of America. Our earmark ones are Passport to Manhood and Smart Girls. And then we also do Triple Play, which is an active program.
Okay. Tell me what Triple Play is.
It's basically anything active, healthy living. It can be anything from in the gym, activities that you do in the gym, dodgeball, kickball, basketball, to nutritious meals, and things like that.
Okay.
I want to hear about Passport to Manhood because I didn't get that. I had to find out the hard way.
You know, I could say something here.
It was a lot.
We were both silent.
So Smart Girls and Passport to Manhood, those programs are they're real. What they really are programs that teach things like how to date appropriately, how to tie a tie, how to how to balance a checkbook, how to be a productive adult. So for a lot of our kids who may come from a single parent household or might be being raised from by a grandparent or an aunt or an uncle
or television.
It gives them the chance to really learn those skills that maybe they're not learning at home.
Got it. Miss Carolyn.
Yes.
Here representing the Robert W. Johnson Community Center,
yes.
standing in the gap for the community. In full disclosure, I recently joined the board to come in and help, especially on the financial end of getting things together. But tell us a little bit about the story of the Robert W. Johnson Community Center. And if you don't mind, I'll fill in some of the gaps because I'm the history nerd that's been tracing the center since Reconstruction.
Okay, and I'm glad that you have, because if I leave anything out. Well, first of all, the information I get from the center, I've gotten it from speaking with seniors and the elderly. Mm-hmm. My cousin was a history buff. Well, she lived here, and she remembered everything. So I gave her a list of questions because I wanted to know. So she and another citizen went together and they answered all my questions, and they lived here. They lived it. They went to the North Street School. So before I start telling you about the center, I want to clarify that when people talk about the North Street School, they forget the Robert W. Johnson Center is the original North Street School. When they moved up on the hill, that became the new North Street School. And the reason I clarify that is because I was with a group talking about the center, and they said, I think you have something wrong. I taught Head Start up there, so there's no way they went to the North Street School. So I had to go back, no, this is the year. So what if I may say old or new or original and new, so that you'll know, and the audience will know what I'm talking about. But in 1888, the center was constructed. And the reason they built it, because African Americans had no place to go to school. So they built the school, and in 1889, the first classes went in for grades 1st through 8th. And there was only 4 rooms.
And who built that? Was that the school system, or who built that?
That part of the history, I don't know. I only know from what they tell me, and Reggie may know more of that.
It's in the archives.
Okay.
So in another one of our sessions when we geek out, I'll
Okay. Okay. So they remained at the North Street School, the original, where we are at the center. And when I say center, I'm talking about the Robert W. Johnson Community Center. Some people will still say rec or center, but we're talking about the Robert W. Johnson Community Center. So from the time they moved in 1889 to 1947, that's where everyone went to school. And kids were bused in from Keedysville as far away as Cumberland, Hancock, Beaver Creek, Sharpsburg. All those youth that could get in, they came in, they were bused into the school. So they went there for, and I'm going to look down at my paper because I want to make sure the history is so wonderful, I don't want to miss anything, leave anything out for you. So they went there through 1947, as I said, grades 1st through 8th. Then in 1947, Washington County decided we want to keep things separate, but we want to make them equal. So all the youth that went to the North Street School, original, were moved up on the hill to the new North Street School. And they had 14 rooms up there, and they had training classes. They tell me boys and girls showers, and they could offer more programs up there. So that's all the youth moved up there on the hill. Then in '56, integration. So the last graduating class up on the hill was in 1956.
And was that, you had mentioned in the, what I'm calling the old school, it was grades 1 through 8. What happened after grade 8?
That was as far as they went to school, to 8th grade.
Okay.
Now, if they wanted to go further education, I'm told they could go to a store in Harper's Ferry.
Yes.
Okay. And at that time, for the non black community, was there, I'm assuming there was above 8th grade, right?
That I don't know what
I
the
mean,
other
obviously,
schools
outside
said.
of the black community, it was above 8th grade.
Up to
But we're
12th
talking
grade.
about the period of time when the community was redlined.
Right.
That
No,
was
I
the only
understand.
place
Okay.
where-
So that's
where-
through 40. Okay. Gotcha.
Yes,
And at the new North Street School, did that go through 12th grade?
that went to up to 12th grade.
Okay. And that
Yes.
started in 1956,
That was 1947.
1947.
Is that the school that was the Woodland? I'm just trying to get my bearings. So is that the Woodland Way? Then that was the Woodland Way School.
No, it's Head Start. Where Head Start
Oh,
is, right
I'm
beside
sorry.
us.
Yes. Okay.
Right there. That's okay. That's all right.
Yeah, I was trying to get my bearings on that one as well.
No, this is all in the same street.
Okay.
Okay.
Then when the last graduating class went through, the new North Street School became, up on the hill, became known as the Black YMCA. Because during that time, people of color could not go to the YMCA that was downtown. So that became, that was the Black YMCA. So in 1958, the community went before the mayor and the council and said, you know what, our community needs a pool. Our kids need someplace to go because they couldn't go anywhere except for the creeks. So the city granted a pool. Pool was put in 1959.
And that was put in where? In
That
Johnston
is at
Center.
at the Robert W. Johnson Center. There's a gigantic pool in the back.
Okay.
And that's where the pool was granted, and it's really like the lifeblood for our youth and the community. The pool is very vital. But during this time when it was the pool was put in, their center, the Robert W. Johnson Center, the old North Street School, as I'm referring back
Sure.
to, okay, that became like a social place. That was still a rec center during those years from 60 to 66. And that was under part-time director leadership of Mr. Robert Johnson. And so that was a place they still went and had dances and socialized and things of that nature. It was a community place where people knew they could go and always had a place to go to be safe and be together.
And I'll add to that, we're saying Tuskegee Airman Robert W. Johnson.
Oh, okay.
Yes, he was Tuskegee Airman. Yes. And so from there, in 67 or 68, the North Street School, Robert W. Johnson Community Center, became incorporated, and the name was changed to Memorial Recreation Center.
Okay.
So it went from everyone saying, I'm going to the North Street School, now I'm going to Memorial Recreation Center. But it's all the same building,
Right.
where we are now. And in 1980 to 2005, during that time, it was under the leadership of the board and Miss Ruth Ann Monroe. And she sadly passed away in 2005. But everyone knows and has a dear heart for Miss Ruth Ann. She was the community. She was the community center.
Ms. Carolyn, I would love for us to pick up some more of this story, but we want to take a break because Jim gets on me when we don't save enough time for commercials. So if you guys will stay with us, we have a lot more to talk about, so get comfortable for us, please.
Okay.
All right. Stay with us. We'll have more with Ms. Carolyn Sterling and Addie Naughty after the break. Welcome back to the show. Thank you, ladies, for staying with us. Terrence, I'm going to let you jump in and, with Miss Carolyn.
Yeah, I've learned a lot of history about the Robert W. Johnson Community Center and what it means to the historic Jonathan Street community. But community centers were important throughout the country to African American communities. It became exactly where everything happened, from dances to where people learned to cook. There were home ec classes in there. They were where the kids got their GEDs. Some of those things, I'm assuming, happened right at the Robert W. Johnson Community Center as well in the historic Jonathan Street community.
They certainly did. With Miss Ruth Ann, she had cooking classes, sewing classes. Of course, we've always had the after-school program, life skill classes, and everything was done, though, with right in the community. It wasn't with other groups coming in to help. I think during that time, there were more people stepping up to come in and help with those programs. But she offered all of that and it was quite a few, all the community youth. They can all go back to their childhood or when they were at that center and what they learned under Miss Ruth Ann. So you were right, the community centers have always been thriving. Now, the center wasn't always called Community Center. It was a Memorial Recreation Center. It didn't change to Community Center until we renamed it.
And that was when?
We renamed it in 2013. It was when it was renamed to the Robert W. Johnson Community Center.
And that was after the person that really kind of kick-started the whole thing? Is that accurate?
No, it was named after Mr. Johnson because we did a name search. We did not a name, looking for a new name for the center. We were being told by the people that were giving us grants and funding that recreation was not the way that people were looking at to fund. That if you took the name recreation off and put more about community in there, you may get more people noticing you and wanting to support you, because they associate recreation with kids are just going to the gym now. It's all playing, and they wanted a more educational element to it. So we did the name search, and was a contest. I wasn't a part of that. I was on the board, but names came in, and Mr. Johnson's name got the most votes. So that's why we renamed it the Robert W. Johnson Community Center. He was well known in the community. All the athletes now, I mean, they all know him as Coach. So he was Tuskegee Airman.
Wow.
And he had been interim part-time director at the center during his time. So it just seemed the best way to go, and apparently those that voted thought so too. So.
And over the years, I've come to learn that it's, not only him, but his sons were lifeguards at the pool. And, they spent a great deal of time there. And I know that, the third generations, those children have participated in the summer programs and come out and participate. And a lot of what the community center is trying to do is to bring those families back to be active, because they are legacies of this tradition.
You mentioned volunteers ran a lot of the programs. Can you speak about any of that history?
Well, I started working with Miss Ruth Ann back in 97 or 98. I've known her for many years. I'm not a native of Hagerstown, but I've been coming back and forth on summer since I was 13, so I got to meet a lot of the people that are now grandparents and great-grandparents, and their children at the center. So, but when I started volunteering with her, and that was my first initial going into the center, because prior to that, I worked out of town, so I really wasn't involved in coming to the center. But when I went there, the programs, as I say, she was running were sewing classes, cooking classes, and the volunteers, because we had people that enjoyed cooking. So they didn't mind coming in, giving an hour or two to help upstairs in the kitchen, because we do have a full kitchen. They would come in and teach the young ladies and if any of the fellows wanted to learn, they could too. So
different time though,
different.
Right?
I think they may have been in there together. I wasn't there on the nights they were doing cooking, but I knew they had people come in and did reading groups. I love to read, so I was really interested in that part of it, the reading group and reading comprehension, but trying to make reading fun, because and they had pool tables, they had TV in there, and one room was set up just kind of like a relaxation room with the sofa and the chairs, and everyone would be sitting around having conversations, and they were all wonderful conversations. Everyone just seemed to really enjoy being together. Not a lot of the drama that, that has happened over years across the country and in our own town.
Yeah.
And I know that, back, slavery, post-slavery, churches were that comfort zone, that home base, that beacon in the community. And later on, it became community centers and rec centers who became that beacon, that home away from home.
Yes.
I was a latchkey kid. It was a place to go to when my mother wasn't home, or my father wasn't home. It was that safe place, not only just to learn, but to be
Yes.
comforted, and also to have a bunch of different other parents that may not have lived in your house, but treated you as if they were family as well. And
Yes.
I believe both the Boys and Girls Club as well as the Robert W. Johnson Community Center answers that, that issue of being within the community and having
Yes.
access. There's no traveling outside of those communities in most
Right.
cases. Unfortunately, for decades, it was unsafe to leave your communities as well.
Yes.
And that has been passed down for generations. To have institutions like both yours in a community was that safe place for children and adults alike.
Yes.
So, but let me ask this. I hear about the tracks. Across the tracks, on the other side of the tracks. What is that divide? Again, I'm a native New Yorker. I help and I serve in the community when I can, but I keep hearing that don't go across the tracks, or we don't go across the tracks. Where's that divide, and where did that come from?
Well, that expression that I've learned came from even back in rural South. Every neighborhood, one side of the track was always divided by a railroad. And the poor, and that divided what status you had. You either lived on one side of the track or the other side of the track. And people with money, of course, they were on their side of the track. In Hagerstown, and I heard that too when I would come down in the summers, like, we gotta get across the track before a certain time, because if you're in the West End, that's not going to be so good for you, and things of that nature. And so I think that's one of those things that came up and ingrained in people from little up. You're on, and people even say that now. Even families may say, "Oh, they're from the wrong side of the track," meaning that they don't meet our standards here. They don't necessarily have to be a physical, visible railroad track, but it's that stigma, it's that wall that no, they don't fit in here. They're from the wrong side.
So you mentioned after-school program.
Yes.
Talk to us about what that looked like in your organization.
Well, our after-school program before the pandemic, the youth would come. They were all walked in. They were all walkers because they were from the local community. They come in at two different stages because high school gets off a little earlier, and then the elementary children get off. So they would come in. There'd be homework club for them to start off, the older ones, and so they would start the homework club. And if they didn't have homework, they could go in the computer room. But they wanted to make sure that their homework was finished. But like Addie was saying, they don't send homework home anymore. Or if they do, you don't know about it.
Right.
So, but we always tried to have that downtime where if you do have homework, try to engage you to talk about it. Or what did you do today? What did you learn today? And then it would go into maybe something fun, board games, a movie, reading, whatever. If a volunteer wanted to bring something, we've had doctors there that have volunteered their time to teach, medical issues. We've had from dentists come, and when they come in, they'll bring their bags of goodies so the children could take home with them, because everyone likes a little handout. And so if you stayed in the class, it was making it fun, but you got to take this bag home too. So I enjoyed the reading groups. When I begin at least once a week in the beginning, one evening a week, comprehension, making reading fun. I'd copy a book, copy something, and everyone would have a part of a play to read, and then we engage. So everything is always interactive. And we had a computer room. It was monitored, so there was always something. And because we're so close to Wheaton Park, during those times when it was nice, the staff would take them to the park, and they could burn off all that energy. And on rainy days, we had access to, which is Head Start, but they have the gym up there. Because remember, that was the Black YMCA. The gym is still there. They take them up there to run and play and have a good time.
So I know we want to talk about any number of things, but I need to pause here just for a second and ask this question of both of you, frankly. Yes. We celebrate we appreciate work, we celebrate results. What impact have your two organizations had on the youth of the community that you've served over the years? And I'll start with you since you already had the floor.
Oh, okay. I think the greatest impact is, because speaking to parents and grandparents, is the fact that our youth have always known the center has been a safe place to come. When there's problems on the street or things going on in the neighborhood, they will run to the center if they can't go home. Or after school, if they know there's no one home, they know they can find someone at the center. And just knowing that you can feel safe when you come home from school, or if it's a day off school, that you have a place that you can go. That means a lot to the youth to know I can be safe somewhere.
Not to mention cooking skills and everything else that you've talked about, right?
Well, that was during the time of Miss Ruth Ann.
Well,
yes.
okay.
Yes, yes. But we do offer after-school meals for them, after-school snacks.
Wow.
When our kitchen needs to be upgraded and all, but prior to that, in the wintertime, it was always a hot meal.
Interesting.
Now we have to downsize, but it's always a snack because it's a long time from them having lunch till they get their meal at home again.
Sure. Addie?
You know, I've only been at the club for 5 years. And prior to my being there, of course, Jim Diener was there for almost 40. And so when you look at like short-term outcomes and long-term outcomes, I can say for long-term outcomes, because I had nothing to do with it, that people who went to the club, grew up going to the club, they credit the club with saving their lives. They literally say the club, it kept like Miss Carolyn had said, it gave them a safe place to come to, etc. That's all Jim and the staff that came before us. We do a yearly survey, a National Youth Outcomes Initiative survey, where we take kind of a snapshot in time of how our kids think we're doing. And I just ran the numbers for some funding that I was looking for from during the pandemic year. So we were open for distance learning when the schools were closed. And 100% of the kids that were polled reported that they felt safe at the club, which is huge. I mean, if you take out every program that we run, and the programs are important, don't get me wrong, but if you take out every program that we run and you focus on the fact that we're providing these kids with good, positive adult interactions and a place where they feel safe, that's consistency that maybe they're not getting elsewhere.
Yeah.
Yes.
Wow.
I agree.
And let me commend both organizations for the work you did during the pandemic, because you really stood in the gap of education when schools were closed, and distance learning was extremely important. Yes. As well. How has that transition since? I know the Robert W. Johnson Community Center has just got broadband and an enhancement in their broadband as well through a broadband grant. But Boys and Girls Club, how does that look today?
Thank the Lord we are just back to after school. I never want to be a school again. No, but the community was so supportive. I mean, schools they loaned us desks to use. Antietam Cable came out and upgraded all of our internet at all 4 of our sites so that all of our kids could be on their tablets at once. And it was it was really important for us to do that, and my board was really on board with that. I mean, there was not a question in anyone's mind, even though it cost us way more money because we had staffing, we were open all day, and it cost us way more gray hair. And I got the unfortunate people were treating me like I was the principal. We had to do it. That was what our families needed. So.
Absolutely. And I know with the Robert W. Johnson Community Center being such a historic building, it's not easy to upgrade technology in those kind of buildings either.
That's why when you were saying that, we didn't have the smooth sailing that you're talking about. And first of all, I want to give credit to the staff that we had on board, because we have a working board, but we also work. So our staff that were there, they really held this down. They had our support, but they were the ones that were in there. And they did this virtual learning. The couple times I could get in there, iPads were going down, the teachers were being cut off. It was very frustrating, not only for the youth. I mean, you could just see in their eyes, they were just totally frustrated because they couldn't do their work. They were already feeling isolated. So what we had to do was turn that around, let teachers know children cannot get on. So then we had to engage in something fun to get their minds off of that because they were already too stressed.
Yeah, but you gave them the safe place.
Yes,
you gave
but
them
they
the
were there.
opportunity, and the technical issues notwithstanding.
Right.
I mean,
It was a very weird like year and a half.
Yes.
I mean, even like the summer programming that we ran, our summer programming it's swimming and it's field trips and it's and I always say the summer camp we ran after the world kind of started, oh my God, this is the most boring summer camp because like the kids were in groups of 10 or 15 and they couldn't interact with each other. And one thing I'll say, and I don't know if it was the same down at the center, but at my Pennsylvania Avenue clubhouse, because it's an old building, I actually could separate the kids better into different rooms, whereas with my clubs that are more open, I had to give they got assigned like a quarter of the gym and then they just stay away from each other otherwise. It was just really bizarre. Wow. And like I said, nothing that I want to do again.
And most of the kids in those centers, their parents were the essential workers.
Yes.
Absolutely.
They were going
a different
to work.
kind. I would say they were a different kind of essential
Yes.
worker because they weren't, the kids that come to the club, like their parents, they're not necessarily doctors or they're not necessarily, police officers or whatever. They're like they work the checkout line at Martin's or they're medical assistants. And, I know I have a 10 and a 6-year-old and I know the costs of having to provide care for my kids during that time was
Incredible.
Astronomical. And so I was really, I don't even think we charged. I mean, we just opened our doors and told the community that we were doing that, and that was enough support. So again, it was really important. It was really important that organizations like ours and Girls Inc. that we were able to open.
well, and we talk about what your organizations do for the community every day, but even more so when we face a crisis like this. And where's the first place we turn?
Yeah.
Right,
To the two of you.
right.
Ladies, we have more exciting stuff to talk about. Everyone, quick bathroom break and come back. You don't want to miss what we're going to share next.
Quick
Stay with
bathroom
us
break.
after the break.
Yes.
Welcome back to the show. Ladies, thank you for staying with us. Now we're
yes.
getting into the meat of the conversation. Senator Corderman just announced over $20 million coming to our community. On the interwebs, I saw that about $2 million of that is coming to the Boys and Girls Club.
Oh.
Addie, talk about what you have going over there and where that money's going.
Okay, the interwebs. So our Pennsylvania Avenue clubhouse is over 100 years old. So like everything in Hagerstown, it's a former Fairchild building. It has long lived its lifespan. So when I took over 5 years ago, again, I took over for someone who had been there 40 years, and he had the ability to fix everything, and I have none of that ability. So
I have pictures of Mr. Diener on the roof fixing the roof. Seriously, I
yeah,
do.
no doubt.
Wow.
So we started looking. The board started looking at what needed to really be kind of fixed, legitimately fixed, and it was just too much. It was over. Like we needed a new roof that was $1 million job in and of itself. So we started looking at replacing it. We were given the land adjacent to the south, which was the Blaine window family, the Blaine family property, and it gave us an additional 1.25 acres. And so we're going to build a 28,000 square foot club there. And we're in the middle of our capital campaign, and we did just receive $2 million from the state of Maryland, thanks to Senator Corderman, the Maryland Alliance of Boys and Girls Clubs, and of course Governor Hogan. And that puts us at about the halfway mark for our $8 million campaign. So
Wow.
Congratulations.
yeah, I'm really
Yes.
excited about that.
Congratulations.
I like the fundraising part of it. It's an easy ask. So because because I have pictures of it like raining in my arts and crafts. I have video of it raining in my arts and crafts room. So that's the kind of fundraising we engage in.
Well, and hopefully as people continue to hear your story, those that are not familiar with the center.
Yeah.
I mean, I sat with Jim Diener every Thursday at a service club meeting for years, and you have opened my eyes significantly tonight in this last half hour or so.
Our goal is to get as many people in that building as we can, because you walk in the front door and you're like, oh yeah, you need a new club.
So what will the new club, I mean, what's different? Tell me, other than the fact that it's new.
So it will have additional space. We'll have a dedicated STEM lab. We'll have a dedicated arts and crafts room. We'll have a dedicated teen center with hopefully their own entrance. We'll have a commercial kitchen. So our kids actually are fed through a really great partnership with Washington County Public Schools. But we want to do cooking programs. We want to do, we want to host family nights. We want to host family dinner for our members and their parents. And we want to do different kinds of outreach. And so we were kind of intentional about wanting a commercial kitchen. It'll have a cafetorium, which right now everything happens in the games room at at the Pennsylvania Avenue Clubhouse. It will have outdoor play space. So much like the kids at the center, if our kids want to play outside at the Pennsylvania Avenue Club, they walk to Wheaton Park as well. So, we'll have more space for more kids. So,
well, that's what I was going to ask. So you'll be able to increase your capacity
we will.
as well.
Yeah, we'll be able to have about 250 kids in there.
Okay.
So,
and do you find at this point that that is a choke point for you in terms of your ability to get more people in the club? Could you serve more people if you had more room?
So the big issue right now is that the back half of the second floor has been shut down because of some safety concerns. Pre-COVID, that club had about 125 kids, registered members, and our average daily attendance was about 85.
Wow.
We've lost a quarter of our square footage. So now I think we have just about 100 registered members, and our ADA, it's 70, and it's tight. It's a tight fit. I mean, especially trying to maneuver that during COVID. Right. So we'll have the ability to grow. Transportation's an issue always. So, but in our growth plan, we're hoping to increase our transportation. Because here's the reality: my Pennsylvania Avenue Clubhouse and the center is a mile apart. I have my 3 other clubs are within 3 miles. Girls Inc. is a mile. Everything's a mile apart, right? We all fill our buildings. There's still kids that we're not reaching. We're not reaching the kids necessarily in Halfway Manor. I'm not even reaching the kids in the Bradford because of transportation issues. So there are so many great resources when you look at really starting with the center and going our bearings west in town for kids. Who's serving the East End kids? You know what I mean? There's who's serving the kids who are down in Williamsburg? Who's serving the kids who are in the rural communities? We have to figure out how we can serve them. They're out there. So that's what we're going to try.
And they have the need.
And they have the need,
Right.
absolutely.
And they're not just sitting there patiently waiting.
They're not.
Either.
So when could we see this building become reality? Do we know that? Or am I
know my
too soon?
hope. You're not too soon. My hope, I think our plan, so of course we have this very generous funding from the state that has to be spent in the fiscal year 2023. So I would envision that we will break ground at some point in 2023. Now, the $1 million question becomes, what do we do with the clubhouse or the kids at that point in time? My hope is the clubhouse is the last thing that we have to bring down, since we have so much property that we can work on and build on and whatever. We will have to relocate our kids at some point, and we're trying to figure out what that's going to look like.
Okay, interesting. That's a lot. You've got a big job ahead of you.
Yes.
I'm so excited though. I mean, the community.
That's pretty obvious.
And so, and honestly, like when it gets hard, the community has been so supportive of this project, and us in general. I mean, literally, I could not ask for more. Well, I could, but the community's been so supportive of us. So, when things get tough, or when we get, when things get a little stressful, that's what keeps me going. That and the fact that when you run an out of school time program, every day you get to see your mission in action.
Yes.
Every day. I mean, we now that COVID's over, the kids get to come back in and get lollipops. Oh my gosh, they drive me nuts. They're all over my office, under my desk, on my desk. I'm trying to work at the same time. Thank goodness I have attention deficit disorder. But it's great because they're in my office.
That's great.
So.
Okay.
Ms. Carolyn, I am not going to ask you to quote the numbers and the financial benefits that the community center is receiving. I will take that
Okay.
responsibility. But what I want to springboard into after what you said is the press release was just released that there is going to be a partnership between the Boys and Girls Club and the Robert W. Johnson Community
Yes.
Center to bring programming to the community center. And, you know, just from the perspective of the center, from my vantage point in regards to helping the community center become financially solvent and solving some of their issues, this is really the Boys and Girls Club standing in the gap for a need that the community center has. And in building this relationship, there'll come a time when your organization has a need for your kids, and hopefully the community center will be there to stand in the gap when
Yes.
your building is not available to you.
Well, but here's the other thing. I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt
Sure.
you. But here's the other thing. You're serving more kids. Isn't that the goal?
That is
Yes.
absolutely the goal.
So if
That
this
should be
if this
always the
remains
goal.
if this remains solvent and builds, how do we lose?
So
You
and this
don't.
is, when I started at the club 5 years ago, we were kind of siloed for whatever reason. I've been in nonprofits a long time, and you do not affect change in a silo. So, this is what we're talking about are things that we've done with Girls Inc. And it honestly it gives the kids opportunities to experience something different,
Yes.
and it gives and it's a win-win.
And I'll go back to what I said earlier. It dispels the cross the track myth as well.
Yes.
It does.
Because you're proportionally sitting right on each side of the tracks. And so that just goes back historically of breaking down that
Yes.
barrier that those tracks have created in a community and stopping some of those silos and creating that bridge that's going to allow people to kind of branch out and have those opportunities. So I think it's amazing. In every way possible.
Well, and you also, Addie, talked initially when you were talking to us about the fact that Boys and Girls Club is a national organization, and you can learn from what others that are doing that is successful. And now it seems to me that you can bring some of that to bear for these programs
And
that are
we-
partnered.
I'm sorry, and
go
the
ahead.
and the timing kind of worked because we had the state funding to do the outreach. So the same funding that is putting us in Cumberland and Garrett that's also the funding that we can use to do outreach to help fill in the gap for them. So.
Yes.
So how do we get them funding, Reggie? You're the financial guy.
We're working on that. we're working hard on that. But before we get into that, Ms. Carolyn, I think a misnomer is that the community center has just been thriving through the pandemic. The community center has been surviving through the pandemic.
Yes.
But the truth of the matter is the community center has not had programming in its building since last summer.
Yes, exactly.
So can you speak a little bit in regards to the programming and what Addie has introduced and what you like to see for the center?
Well, first of all, I am just so grateful that we are going to be partnering with the Boys and Girls because we were really at the center as far as programming and everything drowning. We have a lot of capital expenses and things which Reggie will speak to be done, but it takes operational. And to keep that
And
building
nobody
open.
wants to fund operational costs.
Nobody wants to fund operational. So for a while there, we couldn't even use the center because we had maintenance issues, water problems, HVAC problems. So if our children couldn't come there, they weren't really going anywhere. From what I understand, they weren't going to the Boys and Girls Club.
Because they weren't crossing the tracks, right?
And for whatever reason, they weren't. But our center has always been free. We don't charge for anything. So when they come in, so it wasn't because they couldn't afford to come, just that we didn't have a place for them to be because of maintenance concerns. So this partnership is going to open doors and it's just going to just expand the horizon of not only our youth but our staff, because they're going to see how other staff interact. They will see how the staff and our organization interacts with our youth. So it's definitely a win-win. The fact that they're national and they have resources that they're willing to share with us in the community, that's just over the top. I'm just so excited to be a part of it.
Well, and their mission, there are probably other organizations with which you could partner, but the fact of the matter is, it's the same mission. It's
Yes.
just a different geography.
Yes.
And not so much different. What,
Right.
a mile, 3 miles? I don't remember
Right,
what you said.
yeah.
But their organization came to us.
No,
we
I
talked
get it.
together, and I think that's just.
But I mean, you
start.
look at the other nonprofits,
Yes.
there are certainly other nonprofits you could potentially partner with, but I
Yes.
don't see the fit that I would see with the Boys and Girls
Right.
Club, in my view.
And I just add this too. I serve on a lot of boards and nonprofits across Washington County. This is what needs to happen more. There needs to be more collaborative efforts of organizations who have resources that can work in partners together. Unfortunately, there's a model out there financially that pits nonprofit organizations against one another for dollars. You have to compete for grants. So that really makes it difficult at times for these organizations to really collaborate and work and partner with each other, because they're all kind of focusing on how to keep afloat themselves, how to develop their programs, and how to seek those same dollars that they're competing for within their own organization. So this is a model that organizations like the United Way tries to sponsor with collaborative grants as well. But this is a model of seeing two organizations who have leadership that come together and work it out and come up with creative solutions, and hopefully a model that others build on in the community as well. So I commend you both for what you're doing. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, and the other
Yes.
thing in my mind, and I think the funding piece is an important piece, but just we talk all the time about duplication of efforts in our nonprofit community, and 5 organizations trying to do the same thing. It seems to me that this is a step towards addressing
is.
that.
Yes.
I had mentioned earlier, we've done, not to this extent, but we've done some similar things with Girls Inc. where, Boys and Girls Club of America has a strong gang prevention program. We would go in and run that. They would come in and run, STEM programming that we didn't have at the time. And there's something similar going on at Salem Avenue Elementary right now. So you are right. This is where nonprofits need to go. And in our community, we all get along pretty well. The nonprofit leaders, there's not a whole lot of acrimony or anything. So I think we can be a model for sure. So
Yes.
That's great.
Jim, I'd like to switch hats for a little bit. You're the host for the last 5 minutes, and I'm a panelist to share some information.
Okay.
Thank you for obliging me.
I don't think I had a choice at this point. Here's Jim.
Addie made her announcement in regards to the funding that they received from the state. The community center is receiving $500,000 as well.
Wow.
400,000 of that is coming through the governor's supplemental budget, and 100,000 is coming within a bond bill. The 400,000 was actually advocated for by Terrence, myself, and our team, the Western Maryland CDC, because we knew that there was a $7 billion surplus, and no other entity was advocating for the community to keep the work that was started going with the cabin. So within 24 hours of shaking hands and a photo op with the governor in Annapolis, I let him know that there was going to be a proposal on his desk in the next 24 hours. And we executed on that. And we didn't get all that what we asked for, but we planted the seed for that for the community. And we're grateful for the $500,000 that we received. But just to kind of give a broad context in total, the community center has up to $1.3 million for improvements. We asked for
The
significant.
500,000 is part of that?
The 500,000 is part of that.
Okay.
But the community center has already received the $85,000 broadband grant with a 3-year contract with Antietam Cable that's being paid for by the state. We're waiting for workstations and other items to come in. There was $100,000 garnered for the pool several years ago that has not been used. There was a bond bill that the community center never utilized because they did not have matching funds that Senator Quarterman had reauthorized. There was $100,000 from Delegate Cham last session that came in as well. And then Preservation Maryland has $500,000 that can be used for the Jonathan Street community. And even before joining the board, we advocated for that money to go to the community center. The problem, that's the good news. The problem is that once coming in and looking at the numbers of the community center, my expertise, what I've seen is that the community center has been in danger of going insolvent by June because there's no operating capital there. Other community organizations have staff and grant writers and folks that were able to go out and capture a lot of dollars during the pandemic that the community center did not have. It is a shoestring operation, and they missed out on all of those dollars. So now we're at a really tough spot. Now legislators are still looking for money for the community center for operating expenses because we've put together a proposal for what that should look like so that we can give the community center the foundation so that it's around for another 134 years like it has been. Unfortunately, the Jonathan Street community has not seen attention like this and funding coming to it like this in forever. So that creates the opportunity for people to misconstrue what's going on, make innuendo, and flat out commit libel and lie in regards to what is happening with funding.
Wait 1 second. So there's a $1.3 million sitting in a bank account right now somewhere for the community center? That's what you're telling me?
No, this is state capital funding where there is an award process where you claim the funds. It still doesn't come to your bank account. Normally it is a reimbursement. Right. So the reason that we partner with Preservation Maryland is they have a $3 million budget. They have the type of funding where they can pay for the project and get reimbursed later. For instance, I don't believe they've been compensated with the $250,000 that we garnered 2 sessions ago for the cabin yet. But the project got done because they had the operating budget to be able to do so. So there are people up to mischief in our community thinking that there is money in people's pockets that are advocating for the community, and that's not the case. And I am so grateful that the board is moving along, and as small and as mighty as we are, we're going to have some public meetings, press releases to make sure that the community is clear. And for the naysayers out there, just be very clear, the Jonathan Street community is going to win. They're going to win. They're going to get what they deserve, and we're just happy to be a blip on the map of the progress that the community will see.
And I'll just add to that, this is a great opportunity for education. You know, I would like to believe that any naysayers, it's because of a misunderstanding and a lack of understanding. I learned through this process over the last couple of years about capital funding and development and how that money comes in and serving on boards. So I like to think that it's not a negative thing, but it's more of an opportunity to educate, to learn, and also to open the doors and say, you can't pay for operational budget, but people can volunteer for free.
So let me ask you this. And I'm being signaled we're about out of time here. So just a couple questions. So you have board meetings. Are they open to the public?
The board meetings are open to the public. The board meetings have been over Zoom like most organizations. We're going to have an announcement for a board meeting, our next board meeting, to be public. We have invited Preservation Maryland to attend. We have invited Delegate Cham, Senator Quarterman, Senator Joanne Benson, that's looking for operational funding right now in Annapolis. Matter of fact, I was in Annapolis 2 weeks ago on a separate assignment, and from the Senate floor, Senator Benson grabbed the mic and started talking about the Robert W. Johnson Community Center and what it meant to her, because that's where she went to school.
Wow.
And when she talks about the community, she'll often close her eyes and talk about the teachers and the educators and what they meant to her life.
Yes.
And she has been a great advocate for the African American community here all of her life. And even though she serves Prince George's County, she is always checking in on home because she has family members that still live in the community. And she has been instrumental to me in helping me move along in regards to the opportunities that have been given to me. And what do we always say? To much is given, much is required.
Yes.
Mm-hmm. So I honor that legacy. I honor the legacy of those that have came before me in the community. And this is my way of paying it back.
Addie, Miss Carolyn, thank you.
Thank you.
We appreciate it. This was a great
Thank you.
this was a great opportunity to hear about your organizations and what appears to be a very exciting future.
Yes.
So
Yes.
that's all the time we have for tonight. I'm going to take it over. That's all the time we have for tonight. We hope you will like us on Facebook, follow us on Twitter, and send us feedback to feedback@flipsidetv.com. That's feedback@flipsidetv.com. Most importantly, we will hope you will join us next week for another visit to the Flip Side. Good night.